There's something I wish someone had told me before I turned 70. Not because it would have changed everything overnight, but because it would have saved me years of carrying burdens that were never really mine. When you reach this age, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop looking at life through the eyes of the person you wanted to become, and you start looking at it through the eyes of the person you have already become. That changes everything. Today I want to share the 9 things that, at least in my experience, simply stop making sense after 70. I'm not speaking as a teacher or an expert. I'm just an old man who has made enough mistakes to recognize them when I look back. If any part of my journey sounds familiar to yours, then perhaps these words will make your own path a little lighter. The first thing that no longer makes sense after 70 is comparing yourself to other people. I wish I had learned this lesson much earlier. When I was younger, I measured my life against everyone around me. Someone had a bigger house. Someone else's children seemed more successful. A friend retired with more money. Another traveled the world while I stayed home taking care of responsibilities. Without even realizing it, I was constantly keeping score. The strange thing about comparison is that it never ends. No matter how much you accomplish, someone always appears to have a little more. The finish line keeps moving farther away. It took me decades to understand that I wasn't running my own race. I was exhausting myself trying to keep pace with people whose journeys had nothing to do with mine. Now, when I look back over my life, I don't see trophies or rankings. I see birthdays, conversations, quiet evenings, difficult seasons that made me stronger, and unexpected blessings that never could have been measured against anyone else's. At our age, comparing ourselves to others is like comparing 2 completely different books simply because they have the same number of pages. Every life tells a different story. Some chapters are filled with celebration, others are filled with grief. Some victories happen in public, others happen silently inside a person's heart. Once I accepted that truth, I finally felt free. I stopped asking why someone else's life looked different, and I started appreciating the life I had actually lived. Believe me, peace begins the moment comparison ends. The second thing that loses its meaning after 70 is chasing society's standards of beauty. I smile sometimes when I see advertisements promising to erase wrinkles or make someone look 20 years younger. At my age, I no longer want to erase the evidence that I have lived. Every line on my face reminds me of laughter that lasted too long, tears that eventually stopped, worries that somehow worked themselves out, and years that taught me more than any classroom ever could. My gray hair isn't a mistake that needs correcting. It is proof that I stayed here long enough to earn it. When we are young, we often believe beauty belongs only to smooth skin and strong bodies. Age teaches us something entirely different. The most beautiful people I have ever known were not beautiful because of perfect faces. They were beautiful because they listened without judging, forgave without keeping score, and smiled in ways that made everyone around them feel safe. Those qualities become far more noticeable than appearances ever could. I've met older men whose hands were rough from decades of hard work, and older women whose faces carried every season of life. Neither looked young, yet both possessed a quiet dignity that filled every room they entered. That kind of beauty never fades, it grows stronger with time. So, if you spend a few extra minutes studying yourself in the mirror these days, I hope you also notice the courage reflected back at you. The world may continue chasing youth, but wisdom has its own kind of beauty, and it shines in ways no cosmetic ever can. The third thing that no longer deserves our energy is worrying about what other people think. Now, I know this sounds simple, but it took me a lifetime to practice it. There were years when I dressed to impress people I barely knew. I worried about saying the right thing, making the right impression, avoiding criticism, and fitting into expectations that I never created. Looking back, I realized most people were too busy worrying about themselves to spend much time judging me anyway. Isn't that funny? We waste years fearing opinions that often never existed. Somewhere after 70, I noticed something inside me becoming quieter. I no longer felt the need to explain every decision. If I wanted to spend an afternoon reading instead of attending a noisy gathering, I did. If I preferred simple clothes over fashionable ones, that was enough. If someone disagreed with the way I lived, I wished them well and continued living my own life. Freedom doesn't arrive because everyone approves of you. Freedom arrives when their approval is no longer required. There is enormous peace in accepting that not everyone will understand your choices, and that is perfectly fine. You have survived far too much to spend your remaining years asking permission to be yourself. At this stage of life, authenticity is worth far more than popularity. The fourth thing that becomes meaningless after 70 is holding on to activities that no longer bring genuine fulfillment. One of the surprising discoveries of growing older is realizing that we quietly outgrow certain parts of ourselves. I used to believe that once I committed to something, I had to continue forever. Whether it was a club, a routine, a weekly gathering, or even a hobby, I felt guilty if I stepped away. But people change, seasons change, our hearts change too. There came a time when some activities that once excited me simply felt heavy. I kept showing up out of habit rather than joy. One day I asked myself a simple question. If nobody expected me to be here, would I still choose this? The answer surprised me more than once. Slowly, I gave myself permission to leave behind what no longer fit the person I had become. That created room for quieter pleasures I had ignored for years. Sitting outside with a cup of coffee while the morning birds greeted the day. Writing down memories before they disappeared. Learning something new simply because it interested me, not because it would impress anyone. Spending longer conversations with grandchildren instead of rushing off to another obligation. None of those moments would have happened if I had continued filling every week with commitments that no longer nourished my spirit. Growing older doesn't mean becoming smaller. It means becoming more honest about where your heart truly feels alive. The fifth thing that loses its importance after 70 is accumulating material possessions. I spent many years believing that owning more somehow meant living better. Every promotion seemed to justify buying something bigger or newer. Every achievement came with another purchase. Before long, I wasn't just collecting belongings, I was collecting responsibilities. Every object needed cleaning, repairing, organizing, storing, or worrying about. One afternoon, I walked through my own house and realized something uncomfortable. Many of the things I had worked so hard to own had become things I hardly noticed anymore. They were simply taking up space. That's when I began letting go, little by little. I discovered that every box I donated felt lighter than every box I brought home. The house became quieter, cleaning became easier, my mind became calmer. Most importantly, I realized the memories I treasured had almost nothing to do with possessions. They came from ordinary dinners with family, unexpected laughter with old friends, long walks, handwritten letters, sunsets I never planned to watch, and conversations that stayed with me long after they ended. Those are the treasures that never collect dust, never break, and never need replacing. As we grow older, we begin to understand that the richest people are not those who own the most, but those who have learned how little they truly need in order to feel deeply content. That realization naturally led me to another lesson that took me much longer to accept than it should have. The sixth thing that simply doesn't make sense after 70 is maintaining social obligations that no longer bring you joy. For many years, I believed that being a good person meant saying yes to almost everything. If someone invited me somewhere, I felt I should go. If there was another family gathering, another community event, another dinner where I hardly knew anyone, I convinced myself it was the right thing to do. Sometimes it was, but many other times, I came home feeling more exhausted than fulfilled. I wasn't spending my time because I truly wanted to. I was spending it because I didn't want anyone to think I was rude or distant. Age has a funny way of exposing the difference between obligation and genuine connection. These days, I value quality over quantity. I'd rather spend an afternoon talking with one old friend who truly knows me than attend a room full of conversations that never go beyond small talk. I'd rather enjoy a peaceful evening on my porch listening to the wind than force myself into another event simply because it's expected. Some people misunderstand this and think older people become antisocial. I don't believe that's true at all. I think we simply become more selective with the little time and energy we have. Time feels different after 70. Every week matters, every season matters. We become more careful about where we invest our attention because we finally understand it is our most valuable possession. If someone genuinely brings warmth into your life, hold them close. If a gathering leaves you smiling for days afterward, keep going. But if something consistently drains your spirit, you have earned the right to politely step away without carrying guilt home with you. That brings me naturally to the seventh thing that loses all meaning after 70: holding on to toxic relationships. This may be one of the hardest lessons because many toxic relationships don't begin as toxic ones. Sometimes they're lifelong friendships that slowly become one-sided. Sometimes they're relatives we love deeply, but who leave us feeling criticized every time we meet. Sometimes they're people who only seem happy when we're struggling, but become strangely uncomfortable when life is going well for us. For a long time, I believed loyalty meant enduring all of it. I confused patience with permission. I thought setting boundaries made me selfish. But growing older taught me that peace is too precious to sacrifice for people who repeatedly damage it. That doesn't mean becoming bitter. It doesn't mean arguing with everyone or cutting people out over every disagreement. Life is far too short for that. It simply means recognizing the difference between relationships that challenge you to become better and relationships that slowly wear away your confidence, your kindness, and your joy. Some people leave you feeling lighter after every conversation. Others leave you emotionally tired before they've even reached the front door. Pay attention to that feeling. It tells you more than words ever will. These days, I surround myself with people who laugh easily, forgive quickly, encourage generously, and make room for silence without making it uncomfortable. Those kinds of friendships become more valuable every single year. At our age, peace isn't something we accidentally stumble across. It's something we intentionally protect. The eighth thing that no longer makes sense after 70 is clinging to outdated goals. I remember the dreams I had when I was 30. Then I remember the ones I had at 50. Many of them seemed incredibly important at the time. I wanted promotions. I wanted recognition. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to accomplish things that would make people admire me. Looking back now, I don't criticize those younger versions of myself. They were doing the best they could with the understanding they had. But I also recognize that life changes us. The goals that once motivated us don't always deserve to travel with us forever. There comes a season when having another title matters less than having another peaceful morning. Another paycheck matters less than another family dinner where everyone is healthy enough to laugh together. Another achievement matters less than another walk beneath the trees while your legs still carry you there. One of the greatest freedoms I've discovered is allowing my goals to mature as I have matured. Today, my ambitions are beautifully simple. I hope to wake up with gratitude. I hope to remain curious enough to learn something new. I hope to be patient with people who are having difficult days because I know what difficult days feel like. I hope to leave those I love with good memories instead of unnecessary regrets. Those may not sound like ambitious goals to the world, but they have become the ones that give my life the deepest sense of purpose. Never be afraid to change your definition of success. Growing older isn't about giving up on life. It's about discovering what is finally worth giving your life to. And finally, the ninth thing that becomes completely meaningless after 70 is feeling guilty for prioritizing your own happiness. If you're anything like me, you've spent decades taking care of other people. You worked to provide. You worried about children. You helped aging parents. You fulfilled responsibilities that seemed endless. Somewhere along the way, many of us quietly learned that our own happiness should always come last. We became so accustomed to giving that receiving almost felt uncomfortable. Even resting sometimes felt like laziness. But here's what I have learned. You cannot pour kindness into everyone else's cup if your own has been empty for years. Taking care of yourself is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of wisdom. If reading brings you peace, read without apologizing. If sitting beside a lake makes you happy, spend more afternoons there. If gardening, painting, traveling, praying, volunteering, or simply enjoying a quiet afternoon fills your heart, then give yourself permission to enjoy those moments completely. You have spent enough years believing that everyone else's needs must always come first. Happiness isn't something we should postpone until every responsibility disappears, because life will always create another responsibility. Instead, happiness is something we choose in the middle of ordinary days. It's found in slow mornings, warm conversations, familiar songs, comfortable silence, and grateful hearts. I've discovered that the happier I become within myself, the more kindness I naturally have to offer others. Joy is never wasted. It quietly spreads to everyone around us. When I think about everything I've shared today, I realize none of these lessons arrived all at once. They came one year at a time, one mistake at a time, one difficult season after another. If you're already past 70, perhaps you've discovered some of these truths yourself. Maybe you've even learned a few that I haven't. And if you're approaching this season of life, I hope you'll remember that getting older isn't only about what we lose. It's also about what we finally gain. We gain perspective. We gain freedom from expectations that once controlled us. We gain the confidence to say yes to what truly matters and no to what quietly steals our peace. Most of all, we gain the opportunity to live the years we have left with greater intention than ever before. So, don't be afraid to travel a little lighter. Let go of comparisons. Let go of impossible standards. Let go of unnecessary possessions, exhausting obligations, unhealthy relationships, outdated dreams, and the guilt that has followed you for far too long. Fill that empty space with gratitude, meaningful friendships, simple pleasures, laughter, forgiveness, and moments that remind you just how precious life still is. None of us knows exactly how many pages remain in our story, but we can certainly choose how we write the next chapter. My hope for you is that it becomes your most peaceful, your most authentic, and perhaps even your happiest chapter yet. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It truly means a great deal that we could share these moments together. If something I said reminded you of your own journey, I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences may be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Until we meet again, please take good care of yourself, be kind to those around you, and don't forget to be kind to yourself as well. Wishing you peace, good health, and many beautiful days ahead. Goodbye for now, my dear friends.